and join me in pledge allegiance, followed by a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item 3.01, Superintendent's Report.
Thanks, Mr. Norcross. Just a few items tonight. I got notice yesterday, there's a Stuff the Bus event hosted by Myers Bus Company to support Helene devastation victims. I think it's through the 10th. You can do donations of certainly dry goods, water, at 2455 Edenville Road. Drop-offs around back. So I do want to thank Myers for setting that up, getting the communication out, and trying to help the victims down in Florida. October 11th, home football game. You may have heard we're going to pilot some metal detectors. Thanks to Gary, high school administrative staff for getting some communications out. So we're going to test pilot it. We've let the athletic director know of the sending school. They're going to be at all the entrances. And so please, obviously no metal objects, no weapons, but also just pretend like you're going to a sporting event, you're going into the courthouse, you're going on an airplane. You're going to be screened the same way. It is a test pilot of the metal detector system. So if we find out it's not working, we'll just certainly let people in like we used to, but we want to give this a try and test it out. So we're excited to up security a little bit, but also give this a trial run. I do want to apologize. I can't keep up with all the recognitions of the month on what employee group. I missed the custodial day. I also missed Hispanic Heritage Month, and also this month is Principal Appreciation Month. So I am begging that we just do staff appreciation during Teacher Appreciation Week, because I can't keep up with the months. I'm waiting for a Redhead Ginger of the Day month or something like that in my future, but I do apologize if I missed any of those communications. Amen. We did start looking at a calendar committee. So we had one calendar committee that met. The state of Pennsylvania has opened the rules for the calendar on days versus hours. I'm happy to report that committee is a balance of parents from the parent advisory and PTAs and also our staff. So we had one meeting and we're starting to talk about what a different calendar could look like as a result of the state's change in the hours and day requirements. So that's an exciting committee. Stay tuned for more information from that committee. Towards the end of this meeting, we're going to have a Q&A review of the public forum. So I've done one public forum already. The Q&A document is on for discussion tonight, so we can go through some of the Q&A. But I also want to represent three slides that are different from your September 10th presentation for you, the board, tonight, to spur on some more conversation. And a final note, the enrollment report is also on the agenda for tonight. If you look closely, we're up 128 kids in elementary, which is about a 3% increase, but we've only increased 5 students in secondary. So total, it's about a 1.4% increase in enrollment overall, puts us at 9419. And then if you add the students we educate outside the walls of our district, not including homeschool, we're at 10,017. If you add homeschool, it's about 10,500. So note that on the report. That ends my report.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bigger. And it'll be publicized also, but we are going to add a November meeting. The initial calendar showed the board we'd only be meeting once in November. We are going to do a second meeting in November. You've heard the term I've been using, the heavy lift. There's a lot of things to be done. So our additional meeting is going to primarily focus on our continued efforts, planning, direction concerning the heavy lift. And just as a segue to that, I'd just like to thank Mr. Bigger for getting out, doing his public forums. There's more coming, which is all part of this process of, grade level realignment, what buildings then facilities to match those grade level realignments and everything else. So be an extra meeting in November. So board members, mark your calendars, and public, you're always welcome to join us. Presentations, essential conditions and staffing. Mr. Whitman.
All right, good evening. Tonight's presentation is a culmination of our CESD Blueprint Committee and the Feasibility Committee and the next steps of a lot of the presentations that you've seen Mr. Bigger has presented to date. We are bringing this now as part of our timeline as there's much to plan and, of course, to get right. The next two slides that you're going to see are taken from Mr. Bigger's board presentation and the staff and community forum that was just referenced by Mr. Bigger and Mr. Norcross. The resources at the last September meeting, Mr. Bigger talked about there's 4 buckets. Tonight, we're going to be combining bucket 1 and 2, but we're focusing definitely on the educational blueprint recommendations. Next month, you're going to hear a lot more about the feasibility and the facility. And of course, right before December, we're going to be talking about our budget for number 4. As you look at this next slide, there was lots of board discussion at the September board meeting about the 4 buckets. We're going to focus on the second bucket that says enhancements in existing and redesigned programs. Tonight, I'm going to be talking about $2.6 million in staffing for our district. The state allocated us $8.2 million in new money, and we are going to be focusing on that bucket too. As I go to the next slide, you're going to see that the large majority, 84% of the dollars are dedicated to elementary direct student services. Part of the CESD blueprint, when the committee voted, early childhood was the number 1 pillar that they voted on that we needed to devote resources to. Research indicates that we must close gaps prior to 3rd grade. The board has worked with Mr. Bigger on goals, and one of our primary goals is our students all reading, writing, and comprehending by the end of 3rd grade. In order to close those gaps, we need to devote the bulk of our resources there. So the positions that I'm going to be talking about are going to be supporting student needs. You're going to hear me talk about deans of student affairs, some content specialists, interventionists, counselors, enhancing the school climate. Some of those folks have dual roles there. And of course, as we plan for the future, whether we're doing some grade reconfigurations or something different educationally, we have a lot of work to be done in that avenue as well. The breakdown of the essential conditions and the staffing are in these 5 buckets. I'm going to go into great detail as we go through this presentation, but $1.4 million would be for 13 deans of student affairs. We have 13 elementary schools. $450,000 would be to support K-3 literacy by increasing the amount of interventionists that we have in the elementary schools. 3 elementary counselors. Currently, the elementaries have the highest student to counselor ratio in our entire district. We would like to go from 466 students to 1 counselor to 350, and that bringing in 3 would get us to that number. Creating 33 to 35 content specialist stipends. A stipend is in addition to work that they're already doing, so these would be our teachers in these areas, K-3 in the K-3 grade band, the 4 to 8 grade band, 7-8 grade band, and 9 to 12 would be department, basically what we used to call department chairs, but they would be content specialists. I'm going to go a little bit more into their job description a little bit later. And develop 4 director positions and repurpose 3 administrative positions through attrition, with a net cost of $160,000 increase there for those 4 positions. Getting into the actual positions that I just outlined, the Dean of Student Affairs, as I said, 13. would be one for every elementary school. The current system of head teachers is definitely outdated. When we had 21 elementary schools, we had 7 principals. Each principal had 3 elementary schools. Each school had a head teacher when obviously the principal can't be at each one of the elementary schools. And so they had head teachers that when the principal wasn't there, they basically ran the building. We are now at a point in our elementary schools where we have a lot of student behaviors and a lot of concerns throughout the day that our head teachers, who are teaching a full load, get pulled out of the classroom too much, and their own kids in their own classroom are not getting the education they deserve and the attention they deserve because the head teachers are doing a lot. The large buildings of Hamilton Heights, Ben Chambers, Fayetteville, and Scotland would get a full-time Dean of Student Affairs. 3 of those buildings have a lot of our special needs, the high needs students, emotional support, autistic support, and life skills. And they require a lot of building management to make those buildings run smoothly. Ben Chambers has our highest number of students in it right now, about 592. So those 4 buildings would get a full-time Dean of Student Affairs. The smaller buildings that we have, the other 9 actually with Stevens, but 8 of those, they share a principal right now. Those Dean of Student Affairs, we'd like to be 50% Dean of Student Affairs, working on building management, working with student discipline, and remediation of those behaviors. Also working an extra hour each day to help with double runs and for any cleanup in the evening of students that miss buses or parents that don't pick up kids. 50% of their time would be doing Dean of Student Affairs duties. 50% of their time would be helping to provide interventions. We would love in the end that they would be spending more than 50% of their time doing intervention, but our expectation would be in the smaller buildings that 50% of the time of those Dean of Student Affairs would be helping doing student interventions. The interventionist. So you heard that we would be giving some more help to the smaller schools for intervention. Currently, every small building has at least 1 interventionist. We have 17 currently in the elementary schools that are providing intervention to our kids, reading intervention. We are asking to provide 4 more interventionists, and they would be dedicated mostly to the large schools or wherever we would deem necessary. So currently, we have about 1,400 students in our district that are not reading, writing, and comprehending and have, by the end of 3rd grade, with pretty large gaps. And we need to devote more time to getting those kids caught up. And I already talked about the second bucket there, the 8 or 9 elementary schools that are smaller. They would have the deans 50% of their time devoted to intervention. Content specialist. The content specialist would provide expertise in their field. So I have the grade bands listed above. I'm using right now number 4 of the feasibility study. I know we're looking at number 1 and number 4. Seems to be that number 4 is the preferred, so I'm using that. It would work either way, even if we adjust by K to 4, and then 5 to 8 would be the mid grades. But right now we would have interventionists K to 3. You'd have an ELA, a math, a science, and a social studies. Once again, these are stipend positions, and those folks would interview and get selected. We would hopefully have a teacher expert that would work with those teachers in that grade span. The same thing for 4 to 6. If we build a very large 4 to 6 building, ELA, for example, would be 36 ELA teachers that a content specialist would be able to work with. Now, this would be in addition, since it's a stipend position, to what they do already. It would be basically a half hour each day, and they would also help to be providing professional development over the summer. The expectation that they would run at least 2 flex days for their folks in their grade band. Same thing then would be for 7 to 8, and then 9 to 12. It gets a little bit more specific. But each grade band area, we'd have the cores, and then we'd have an ESL expert, as well as a learning support expert. This also meets one of our goals with our comp plan, that we need to support our newest teachers. So the non-tenured teachers, teachers that are within their first 3 years of teaching, would get a lot of extra support from these content specialists. We can meet with those folks after school and do a lot of check-ins and give a lot of support and help them with a lot of resources. The related arts folks, they would be K to 12. So for example, we have 17 music teachers that we would have one person that would help design the music schedule, the concert schedule. Believe it or not, that's a big beast that has to be done each year. The music budget, also working with the music teachers to support the new teachers that need assistance. PE, we have 23 PE teachers currently in the district. We would have one person with PE. Of course, art, library. And then we would combine like tech ed and ag ed, since that's really just 6 to 12. We would have, and their standards are very similar between tech ed and ag ed. We'd have one person there. So right now we currently have 33 on our sheet that we're looking at. The next 4 slides, we're going to get into analysis of the 4 director positions that I talked about a little bit earlier. Just for another historical perspective, at one point we had a superintendent and 4 assistant superintendents that, each assistant superintendent, one we had elementary, secondary, pupil services, and I don't know, it was curriculum instruction, but I would have to go back. It's when Ted Raybould, Linda Cook, and Eric Michael, and Kathy Dustman were here. I'd have to go back and see which each one of those folks did. But we would, through attrition of 3 different administrative positions, we would create these 4 positions. As I stated before, the director of early childhood we really need to do a lot more work working with our pre-K, our Head Starts, and a laser focus on our reading goal of reading, writing, and comprehending by 3rd grade. They would also be overseeing the entire K-3 division of the principals and all of those elementary schools. Heading towards the mid-level is a big transition. And as one of the board discussions, they wanted to see our kids get together earlier. So there's a lot of planning that's going to need to be involved for 4, 5, and 6. If we do a 4, 5, 6 building, even a 5, 6 building, as results to schedules, what is related arts going to be looking like. Also, another piece of our CASD blueprint was really taking a good look at related arts. Does it make sense? At that mid-level, they really need to explore what we're going to be offering 9 to 12. And do we have what we have right now, is that currently exploring all of those things? Really isn't. So there needs to be an adjustment in our related arts. And that transition to middle school is a big deal as well. And they're going to also foster a supportive environment for our students and their well-being. They would supervise the entire 4 to 8 position. This, as right now, as it would sit, if we have a 4, 5, 6 building, the director's office would be at the 4, 5, 6 building, because we'd have 2,100 students there. And we would move some of our elementary principals up to be grade level principals there. They'll have around 700 students in each grade. So the director would really oversee those grade level principals at that building and then work with the 7th, 8th grade principal. Moving on to the Director of Secondary Career and College Readiness. You've heard numerous times from when we presented about the CASD blueprint, and also Mr. Bigger in his talks since he did the state of the district to his community forums. And last month, we talked about we have about 350 to 500 students that aren't getting what they need or what they want. We need to give them something more. And those are more career and college readiness directions and pathways. Definitely need more career pathways. As we move, we'll be taking a look at a 9th grade academy at Cassius. We'll be looking at what do we do with CMS? Does it remain the same? Or do we create Ignite? You heard a presentation on Ignite. So there's a lot of work moving forward on how are we going to give 350 to 500 more students a different option than what we already have at FCCTC, CMS, and caches. And this one person will work with all the principals in the secondary area. The last director is a director of people personnel. This is our largest piece of our district budget. And to orchestrate all the pieces of pupil personnel, that's special ed, that's 504, which is very close. 504 plans can be health related or academic related, and it's very close, but has a lot of the same laws behind it that a child that has a IEP through special ed has. This is health services, so this is our CSNs, this is our LPNs at all of our buildings. This would be counseling at all of our buildings. Alt Ed, as we have our own educational space at the end of this building, we also have plenty of students that require education outside of our district. Some are placed by our district because of behaviors or because of extreme special needs that we can't provide support for here. But some are also placed outside of our district, but they're our students, whether it's court-related, mental health related, or through the hospital. They also would have psychs and social workers that would work that would be under this director. So in summary, those 4 leadership positions are crucial for all 4 of them to work together as we look at a lot of change through our grade configurations, but also that transition from K to 3 to 4 to 8 to 9 to 12 and what we offer. And I have the dollar figure of what it looks like. This is a shift in administration, and it's a reallocation of 3 of those jobs. We will eliminate 3 administrative positions at a savings of about $619,000. But in the end, with going from the 3 to the 4, it'd be a net increase of cost of $160,000. That includes benefits as well. That is not a salary, that's salary and benefits. The next 2 slides are organizational charts. The first organizational chart, I know it's tough to read maybe for the audience, but this is our current org chart. And we have Superintendent Mr. Bigger and the folks that are underneath him. Then we have the assistant superintendent. We have 2 assistant superintendents, a chief financial officer, and our human resources director. As we move to a proposed, we would be eliminating one of the assistant superintendent positions for 4 directors, along with basically 2 principal positions will be reallocated when we move to new grade configuration and or retirements. But you see there's a little bit more under 1 assistant superintendent, and then Mr. Bigger would take pupil personnel under his realm, if you want to call it that. The last slide is a hiring timeline. Many of these positions we will fill from within. We will advertise, and if there's high quality candidates that we should absolutely be taking a look at, especially in some of the director positions that might come from the outside, we'll do that. Our deans of student affairs will probably come from our head teacher ranks right now. They know the job. Our head teachers are phenomenal individuals that do a great job. Our teachers support that, our administration supports that, but the Dean of Student Affairs probably will come from mostly the head teachers. That opens up 13 teaching positions. And one of the reasons why we're bringing this to you now, we want to bring job descriptions at the next board meeting. And we would like to either hear we need more information or give a nod, please proceed. We want to hire the best. That's, once again, part of our comp plan. And we have students that are going to be graduating college in December, where we can start to hire some of these folks for those Dean of Student Affairs and replace our teachers. Same thing with the content. Well, the content specialists aren't going to need to be replaced because those folks are going to come from those different grade bands. So they're experts. They're going to be, we're not going to have someone who's in teaching 8th grade, working with the K to 3 teachers. It's going to be someone who's in K to 3 currently working with them. The interventionist, there's a good chance that we have several folks that have received master's degrees in reading as a reading specialist, so we probably have some candidates there that we may have to replace up to another 4 teachers there, or we may hire from the outside. So right now we're looking at the possibility that we may need to replace 17 teachers in this plan. So we would like to obviously get on that and do those hirings by the end of January, at the latest February. So that's my presentation. I know Mr. Bigger wanted to take it over at this point.
Yeah, so I think it gets a little messy when you think about the grade configurations and feasibility study and the staffing you need to deliver on it. And we're trying to present to you both at the same time, which can feel overwhelming. But the reason why they're both happening at the same time is because you need staff in order to deliver on a grade configuration. So it would behoove us to consider both all at the same time. That doesn't mean all these positions will be hired at the same time, but as we make decisions, that's the staffing that needs to happen to make sure we can deliver on the promise. I wouldn't want to say we can do the grade configurations and then do it with the existing staff in the way we have been doing. It won't work that way. So I think there's really good analysis being done. I'm really happy that we're at this place where we can bring the actions to you. So it was fun talking about the ideas in the spring, and it was fun presenting the ideas. But now, as I said before, we're getting to the work. So this is where the rubber begins to meet the road on moving forward. So presenting simultaneous, though, is hard. It's lots of information, but I hope you can see the connection between the grade configurations, our needs from the survey, and our decisions that we make for this fall related to budget. And I hope you can see how early everything is. This is not a spring budget in May that says, please approve these positions and try to staff them by the fall. We really moved all of our timelines up early, which has put a lot of stress, certainly in the organization. So I hope you can see that, and I hope you appreciate the work that we have into this for now. So at this point, we want you to just kind of talk about it. What do you want to see? We would, moving forward, what we would do is start bringing some of the job descriptions on the no-brainer positions, such as the guidance counselor, intervention, ones that we would do even if we don't change the grade configurations. And those all came from the surveys, and those all came from the essential conditions discussions. So that's how we would begin to move forward. So, but we certainly need your thoughts. We need your ideas, recommendations, considerations moving forward. And this is where you can talk about items too. Like, you can ask questions from Mr. Widman and myself.
Board members.
Yeah, I have a question, please. Kurt, thank you. Awesome job. I'm very supportive of the whole idea to get a lot of help to K through 3. And when you present the numbers of like how many students we have that are below, being ready, they need a lot of help. So I was wondering if there's possibility of accelerating interventionist positions early to get those kids as much help as they can get right now or sooner than later. And since they probably don't need a lot of supervision with a dean or this kind of thing, they can get right to the job. I like the idea of leadership being put in the system, into the organization, where if there's not a leader formally assigned, then nobody's responsible for things and stuff doesn't get done. So I think that's a very important cultural change in the organization. And I think overall it definitely is in sync with the vision I've been hearing for the last year or so. And I'm happy to see things moving in this direction.
I think what you have said about the head teacher model was outdated, no doubt. I think every parent is concerned if that teacher walks out of the room, how many things can happen when a teacher's out of the room. And then also they just can't keep a continuity going. And I think the thing with the dean is excellent in making sure, and again, I agree with Mr. Hayduk, we need to focus down on the K through 3. Because if we don't build a solid foundation, the middle school teachers are going to face the same, or intermediate teachers, middle school, right on through, is going to face the same things.
To build on that, I do have a question specifically, I guess with all the director positions, but specifically the director of early childhood. Do you have or are you developing criteria? Because you said, I think you're going to interview for those positions, because I'm sure that you have people in-house that are very good teachers or very good principals. How that translates to actually being a director of early childhood education, I would be interested to know what that criteria is, where you're getting that from, if you're looking at studies, if you're looking at requirements statewide, because I think that if we are really going to double down on the K-3, that of everything that I've heard here tonight, that would be what I would consider the most important position, if that's indeed the direction that we're going in, and I'm all for that.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, and it's even more than K through 3. I just want to re-highlight what I said, that we need to work with our pre-Ks and our daycares. This is the first time in our entire history this year that we did a kindergarten assessment, and 30% of our kindergartners were what we consider ready for kindergarten in reading. About 50% of our kindergarten students were ready in math, where they can count to 10 and recognize the numbers. But many of our kids don't even recognize their own name when it's written down or spelled out in block letters, or even recognize many letters at all. So we have a lot of work to do in that early childhood. I had a couple stories I was going to tell earlier. You know, one was a couple with, I'll use Ben Chambers as an example. I met with a couple of the instructional specialists, the interventionists over there, right after they finished. They did kindergarten and they did first grade. And they were very, very surprised that 70% of their kids on their assessment, the Acadian assessment, they were read in first grade. And their thing was to support what Mr. Haydock was saying, and Mr. McKee were saying, that we have 70 kids in first grade alone. And when you do the numbers, and if you would average 70 in the first 3, up to K through 3, that's 268 kids at Ben Chambers for those interventionists to work with. That's an amazing amount of students. Now, that's 268 at Ben Chambers. We have 1,400 total. So that's probably our highest building. But if you would divide it out by 13, that's 109 at each building. Now, of course, Lurgan won't have as many. Guilford Hills definitely wouldn't have as many. But that's, when I spoke to those interventionists, and they were flabbergasted that, and they already were starting to talk about, okay, our teachers need to spend X amount of time each day just blending words. And blending words is like you're looking at the word cat, that they get the kids doing that as part of their routines every day. And our principals, kudos to them this year, they redid a schedule in the elementary to allow time for what I need now, basically. And it's a walk to read model, where we're kind of flooding in, where the interventionist, an aide, the teacher, you have 3 or 4 folks in the classroom, and we look at where each student is at, we group them, and we work on the skills that they're ready to learn. So that's why we need some more interventionists to kind of tell you my little story there about Ben Chambers.
Yeah, Steph, the expertise needed in the job description is outlined. You need extensive knowledge in early childhood, proven track record of improving performance. Like, those are 2 top criteria. So, and I think that's a specialty area compared to the other director positions. So that one might be an external position, not so much an internal position.
Yeah, maybe this is a question that perhaps Ms. Clever would be able to provide some input to, but so like magically we would like open up however many number of jobs to be filled, but what's the realistic expectation, despite the fact we might fill so many internally, and we're going to have the numbers like recruiting, and filling positions like we've done for the last year now. So I don't know if maybe things are improving in that area or not.
That is a very good question. So it is something that I know Mr. Bigger and I have discussed, Mr. Widman and I have discussed, what my expectation is when the positions get posted for the deans. More than likely, they are going to be pulled from our existing head teacher model. And I think Mr. Bigger had referenced that, as well as Mr. Widman. So we are pulling those individuals out of the classroom full-time. We expect that domino effect. So I do expect movement within our teacher population with the grades. That's why, to plan for this onset of the numbers that we're going to need, that's why we're starting early. I know one of the things that I actually, and I haven't had a chance to share with Mr. Bigger yet, I had a conversation with Brian Miller earlier today, who is our communications marketing director. And I gave him a heads up. I said, I need you to be ready. Myself and our assistant HR director, Mike Redding, we're going to come and we're going to sit down with you. And one of the things that I would like to do is have a promotional video, if you would, put together and to kind of, hype up the changes that we're having coming down the pike here at Chambersburg, and invite people. Do you want to be part of the change? Do you want to be part of the movement? Do you want to be part of a district that is forward thinking? So that's one of the things we're going to do. I have an opportunity to speak to some of the graduates, specifically at Shippensburg, already thinking about pushing out promotional information to the universities and colleges in PA, and try to highlight again Chambersburg and have that excitement there. They are fabulous at promoting openings that we have at our district, and we really rely on that partnership with them. They get so excited. I'll send them an email and I'll say, hi, my name's Tina Clever, blah, 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 from, Chambersburg Area School District. We have these openings. I would love if you push these out to recent graduates or upcoming graduates. And they're so appreciative. I don't know how many districts do that, but I know I always get a fantastic response from them. So I think we're getting in that mindset and we're getting prepared, because we know it is going to be a challenge, because you all know as well the number of individuals going into education has significantly decreased. And hopefully with districts like Chambersburg, we're going to create that interest once again, that individuals are going to be like, you know what? I think I would like to give education a try, because look what's happening at Chambersburg. Look what they're doing, and look at the success that they're having.
I want to piggyback on that. If you would, elementary is still a place where we do get a significant amount of applications. So I'm not as worried about elementary. I'm more worried about a special education position, a specialty high school position, tech ed, ag. There are a lot of positions you can't get. I do want to connect the dots. Working conditions are the number one reason why teachers generally leave the profession.
Absolutely.
So when you focus on behavioral expectations, you have dedicated people to do that, people will stay. And I think that's the exciting part about the change and that opportunity. So I think people would say, okay, if behavior is going to be addressed, improved, and they're going to be taken care of along with my work, I might stay a little bit longer. So just connecting a few dots there.
I wanted to follow up on Mr. Hayduck's comment on that. I had a very similar question, not just in a matter of the HR perspective of backfilling open slots. As you said, Kurt, that some of these will be, hires from within. So it'll be a known face, but it'll be a new place. And then to Mr. Haydick's point, on the back side of that, now there's going to be a new face in a new place. I'm curious from an educational perspective, it doesn't matter what your business would be or what you're doing. There's a lot of new faces and or known faces in new places at one time. What are some of the challenges, and how do you manage that different roles, 25 years experience, but now you have a new new responsibility, plus you have new faces. That just seems to be a very big challenge for administration.
Some of these challenges we already have talked about. By also doing this early gives us a chance to train the content specialist. Already have worked on job descriptions for the content specialist. For example, the Dean of Student Affairs, I worked with 3 principals, but I also worked with 3 head teachers on that job description as well. So we're ready to bring those forward, and part of it is training on making sure that our principals aren't over delegating to the Dean of Student Affairs, and for the content specialist, what professional development are they going to, how are they going to deliver that? Right now we offer a lot of flex days in the summer. Wouldn't it be fantastic for content experts or some of their extra time during the day that they're working on quality summer PD that's meaningful to their grade band in ELA? For our goals of reading, writing, comprehending by 3rd grade, that they're focusing on these strategies, that they're focusing on this is our system that we're going to use when we're doing the walk to read model. So we're pretty excited about training even the stipend positions, the content specialist, as well as the Dean of Student Affairs in their new positions.
First of all, I really am in support of the change from the head teacher model. My question is, how are you planning to move from the 13 elementary schools having 13 deans to a few years from now, a lesser number of elementary schools? What will happen to those deans who now don't have a building?
So we already have a plan in place for the new building configuration. On my board in my office, the whiteboard, I have a lot, like this is what K-3 would look like. Currently, we would still have one building that would share a principal, 2 buildings that would share one principal. The rest would have their own principals because they're going to end up being a little bit larger in number in students. A couple of the Dean of Student Affairs, though, when you're looking at having a 2,100 plus 4 to 6 building and having one principal for each grade level. Remember, I said the director would be housed there. We'd like to move 2 of the Dean of Student Affairs to that building just for support. And we have one of them moving to the 7-8 building and one of them moving to Caches. So there would be 1 Dean of Student Affairs at the 9 elementaries, and the rest would possibly move through attrition. We would obviously like to get a Dean of Student Affairs that knows, high school kids, that knows, that at least the 4 to 6 building would have been at least a 5th grade teacher, which we have many of them that are that grade level.
Kurt, I want to point something out about the working conditions. Don't assume that the Dean of Student Affairs is just doing discipline when a student gets removed. The number 1 struggle new teachers have is classroom management. And if you can get that right in their first year, they feel good about things. One great attribute that our head teachers have is they know how to manage a classroom. They know how to be strict, they know how to be loving, and they know how to manage the transitions that cause the discipline problems to occur. So I think, I don't want to overemphasize it too much, but working with those new teachers. So just imagine that I'm now the head teacher, Dean of Student Affairs, and I'm full-time available to go into that classroom saying, hey, we're getting a bunch of referrals from this classroom. How can I go help the teacher be more successful in the classroom? So co-teach with them. Work on how to design those routines and rituals for going out to recess, coming back in between academic sections of their room. So I don't want you to get a perception in your head it's just all about consequences. It's really about a heavy prevention approach.
Yeah, when I did the presentation, I didn't read bullet by bullet. That actually is the first bullet under Dean of Student Affairs. Mentor and support all non-tenured teachers within the school through a systematic new teacher induction program. The state moved to a 2-year program. We're really making it 3 years to support our teachers. And the content specialist would be supporting the content. And the Dean of Student Affairs would be supporting our non-tenured teachers with classroom management, exactly what Mr. Bigger was talking about. And we have that actually even in more detail in the job description that we've created with the current head teachers and principals.
Yes, that mentoring is so important.
Yeah.
And that's why so many get discouraged and just say, hey, this isn't me, but if they know someone's alongside them, encouraging them, directing them, helping them,
Right.
it makes the biggest difference. And go along with what you said, work environment is where it's at.
Yep.
Us that have been, I know you folks, and of course I've taken administrative courses. It goes back to the old Hertzberg Westinghouse theory. As long as you like the workplace,
Yeah.
you can handle everything else.
Yeah.
But when the workplace is a nightmare,
Yeah.
it just destroys the morale.
When you take, someone asked me the other day, one of my colleagues, well, why don't you just make assistant principals in elementary? I said, those jobs become generalists. Your assistant principal can't do it all. So if you have a dean of student affairs that's focusing on classroom management behavior, and you have a content specialist that's the expertise in curriculum instruction, you get the best of both worlds. When you ask an assistant principal to do that, generally they were good at one or the other, not necessarily always both. And you're asking them to do everything. And that's an impossible task. And so when you narrow and look at the cost analysis and look at the return on investment, you'll get a better investment than the ROI with the content specialist and a head teacher, dean of student affairs, than you would an assistant principal.
Mr. Bigger, that was a great point. You made me laugh. So I got to talk about me when I was a principal of CAMS North. We had 2 assistant principals and myself. We each took 2 departments that we led. You know, here's a past band director. I'm leading the math department and the social studies department, both things that I'm not a content specialist in. Our principals are still doing that at every level, that they each are, you know, taking something. So at CAMS North, they have someone who's in charge of, you know, science and I don't know what else. You know, special ed would be one department that they're in charge of, but they're in charge of 2 departments. And you try to assign the ones to the assistant principal or the principal that has that expertise, but a lot of times you don't. And it's the same thing at Caches, where we have, you know, folks that may have been an elementary teacher that was in charge of the ELA department.
Right.
So that's one of the biggest needs that he just hammered home with the content specialist.
I have one more nagging question, because people sometimes ask me questions like this. I like to have an answer. So often I get asked or told, what's the ratio of administrators to teachers? And that's a certain number. What is it today and how will it change in the future? Because I'd like to be able to say, yes, it's changing, but here's what we're getting as a result of it.
We're at our lowest rate that we've been at. At one point, we had 60.
If you go to my
8 or
State of the
9?
District report, I think it was 86 administrators at one time identified, and we're in the 50s now. So I think this only changes administration 1 position. So the Dean of Student Affairs is a teaching position, not an administrative position. You don't need a certificate. You just need good classroom management and a focus on low-level behaviors. So
But it is an effective administrative. I
yeah,
mean,
you can classify it. I think what we're trying to do is not give them the full administrative tasks.
Right.
They don't evaluate teachers. They don't suspend students. They're not there to implement academic programming.
Call them Jim or Joe or
Yeah.
Julie or Janet.
Yeah.
They're still a new
Yeah.
employee that starts with a J.
They are, yeah. But if they were an assistant principal, I would certainly give him more duties than just what the Dean of Student Affairs is doing. So if you wanted to go further with that, if you added the 13 head teacher, Dean of Student Affairs positions, plus the 1 director, that'd be a plus 14 if you want to go that route. It wouldn't on the books count for that, though, because they're in the collective bargaining agreement.
Right, okay, thank you.
Yep. Any other burning questions from, I look to the left side of the room, because the right side seemed to ask some questions. How about the left side of the room? Anybody on this side? Just questions, comments, concerns, worries, suggestions?
I'll just say it's excellent work. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm supportive. I see the need for these positions, and I appreciate the emphasis on K-3 especially. So thank you for your thorough work and your analysis. And I mean, there's probably 100 different directions you could go. This is well thought out, though. And I think that that builds trust, not just with the board, but also with the community. So thank you.
I do have something to add. I have a question about professional development and kind of like these new titles.
Yeah.
Is all professional development going to be internal, or is there currently, or would there be
Go ahead, Kurt.
external professional development?
So
We're talking
Kurt,
about new methods of everything.
right. So we could probably answer that question a couple different ways. Currently, we use a professional learning community model where we have time. Teachers have at least one time a week where they meet in educational groups. So it may be by content area. Let's take the middle school, where all the social studies teachers, their duties, after school duties, are all assigned the same day. So another day that they can meet in the morning as either by grade level teams of social studies teachers, or the whole grade level can meet. Elementary, it's a little bit tougher to do. They only have about 30 minutes when you get down to it. They only have a quality of 20 minutes right now. I will say that there's a lot of discussion with the CAEA and looking at a new schedule where we would add some time to the day that would create more time for professional development to happen internally during the day. External, currently we use flex days in the summer. This past year, every teacher had the opportunity, most of them take advantage of it, to take 2 different full day flex days. And then we give them a multitude of choices, and by taking a flex day, they earn currently the Tuesday after Thanksgiving off, and January 3rd, which is a Friday this year. So if they complete the hours there, then they don't need to come in on those 2 different days. So right now, most of our external is in the summer, and mostly we do internal professional learning communities at all different levels. The middle school, the way their schedule runs, they probably get the longest time of 45 minutes where they can pretty much do that every other day. The high school, because there are so many different types of classes, like you're in the math department, you have pre-calc, calc, trigonometry, algebra, algebra 2. So you have smaller groups that meet together that are like subjects rather than generally a whole math department getting together. So the PLCs look different up at the high school, and they base theirs off of before and after school duties that are assigned that are outside the contract, because we got to give them time back. And I know it's a long answer, but for us to do internal time or even a little bit of external time, we have to give them time. So if they do a PLC, then we give them 1 day a week that they don't have to report at 7:20, that they can report at 7:45, which is 15 minutes before the kids arrive. So.
I thank you for everything. Stellar job.
Okay.
Thank you, Kurt.
Thanks, board, for your engagement, your questions. Thanks, Kurt.
Okay, moving on to our consent agenda items. Use the same technique we've been using at Committee of the Whole. We have 11 items there. At the voting meeting, these 11 items will all be voted on in one block. For tonight, we'll start with the admin. If there's any one of those 11 items that any member of Chris or any member of your team want to elaborate on, you get to go first. And then we'll do the same with the board members. If there's any questions you have on any one of those 11, just shout them out. Of course, 5.06, if you want to talk about that, we're going to go to executive session. 5.0, no, where's it, Tammy? The 5.03, that's pretty much just a boilerplate. I mean, we don't really have an option there, but anyway.
I think for me, 5.02 and 5.10 would be the 2 items I would want to talk about.
Shoot, take it away.
All right, so 5.02, Tammy's certainly not here. I don't know if Danette, you want to talk a little about the fund transfers, just from a procedural standpoint, and I'll talk a little bit about where they're being allocated.
Okay, good evening. The information that Tammy has on the agenda for this evening, she and I sit down at the end of the fiscal year, and we look at our fund balances and determine where that money can best be used. So we had talked about the cap reserve, the healthcare trust, and future debt service, places where we would need additional funding. So this is just basically asking the permission to go ahead and move that out of the assigned fund balance and into those particular funds.
To that, I do have a question on the one, the future debt service. Like, a lot of times, once we move these out of general fund, then there's a lot more, many more restrictions or that you can pull them out. So this is a new fund, future debt service, you can see. So how do we, when I say we, the district, not necessarily the board, but how does the district, what's the criteria to pull out of that fund once we put 6.5 million in a future debt service fund?
It would need to be used to pay the principal and interest on the bonds that we currently have.
Currently have?
Yes.
Not new issuance?
So whenever we have a new issue, that principal and interest would be paid out of there as well.
Okay.
So we'll be doing transfers. So we'll budget it in the general fund, and then we'll move it over to that debt service fund every year, and then we'll be paying those payments from there.
It's
So this would be my one,
No,
to
you're
that
good.
point, I think you just answered my question, thank you for that. This is where every year the +1 could go,
Correct.
or plus X.
Yeah, I mean, we're putting some of that into the cap reserve, because I think that was what that MOU was for. But the debt service it would be different. So this would be actually making the payments on the bonds that we currently have. I think the MOU was to build up the capital reserve.
In this short term, until the new issue, until the new bonds come in, and we're under one now.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
that was when we didn't have any new issuance, but now that we're starting to get new issuance, it wouldn't go to capital reserve, it would go back to the principal and interest on this new issuance, these new issuance.
That I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and look at the MOU on that.
Yeah, I think where you put the money is one thing, how you use it's different. You can use capital reserve.
We can use the capital reserve for
Yes.
projects in the
Absolutely.
district,
Yes.
but the debt service fund is literally for paying our bond responsibilities.
That brings up a good point. Maybe at a future committee of the whole, we need to look at that MOU, because I know we discussed it. I know exactly what you're talking about, Danette, and
It might
I
have
think
changed.
it gets twisted. It was perfect when we didn't have any
Cor-
new issuance. But
correct.
Now that we're gonna get new issuance, I think we need to
Agreed.
change that.
We agree
Or
100%.
We need to look at it.
We agree 100%, because you're putting 1% aside in cash only, but the revenue of the 1% needs to stay with, so that we have the revenue to pay for the debt.
Right.
And so when PFM comes at that special meeting date we get, we'll talk a lot about what available funds we have then.
Okay.
But it really is, and I do give the financial department credit, thinking ahead about where we're going, and they're starting to create pathways for this.
I like the parking lot for the plus X, I'll call it. I don't wanna put a number on it.
Yeah. It essentially was a catch-up. 3 years of 1% approximately is that amount. The one thing I do want to emphasize is capital reserve is still to continue the needs of existing buildings we may not touch as part of the grade configurations. So great example, like Hamilton Heights is a 1999 build. You know, it's getting closer to where some items might need replaced. So you don't want to take all your new money and put it into the grade configuration change and leave your older buildings out to not be updated. So part of the capital is really to keep our existing buildings we're not planning on doing anything with, as far as grade configurations, up to date. So that we don't get to the point where we are 75 years old with really aging buildings.
Or, as you update your new buildings with new issuance, your normal capital, your historical capital reserve is still being used for your old buildings.
Yes, exactly, yep. Yep. It's not because one or the other, it is both. So that was a good one. Everybody good with that one for the fund transfer? Any more questions on that one? The next one, Dr. Long is not here. I'm a little bit involved with this one. It's nothing more than to highlight this is a really cool sport and program. That's all I'm gonna say. It's pretty awesome. I can't wait to see this in action. I wanna go, I wanna play, and I wanna see the kids participate. So it was nothing more than, woohoo, this is exciting.
You gonna be the coach?
No, I'm not gonna be the coach,
Oh,
but
okay.
I do wanna watch bocce ball. And I wanna see the students who are participating in this program play a PIAA sport and get excited. Yeah.
Okay. Kurt, Tina or Danette, do you have any items you want to speak to? Okay, if not, go ahead, Kurt.
I know we can't go into detail by about 5.06, but it's always good when we were able to bring a student back from a placement.
Absolutely, thank you. Okay, board members, any of those items you want to discuss in more details?
Yeah, with 106, I just have a follow-up question to Mr. Woodman's comment. And maybe I misread, but I thought, I had seen a number of these reinstatement requests come in. And it seemed like the student was making the proper performance improvements and behavioral changes and so forth, and we accepted. For some reason, I got the impression we were saying, we're not gonna let this guy back right now, he'll stay where he is for the time being. So I may have misread that, my apologies, but.
Yeah.
That is correct.
Yeah, go ahead, Kurt.
That is correct. He's eligible to come back, but he's doing very well.
He's doing well where he is, and he's not coming back to the high school.
After a meeting with Becca Petersheim, who's kind of like the principal that checks in with him every 45 days, it was decided that they would remain there.
When they meet a window of time that they were out, we have to review whether they do come back or continue.
Right, okay. That's the first one I saw like that, and kind of.
And sometimes the parents, students want to say, I'm happy here too. It's part of that process.
Other items, any other board members? Okay, those 11 items will be on consent agenda, and then if we have new consent agenda items, there'll be a separate consent agenda section. Consent agenda A, consent agenda B. Okay, 6.01, education and service, ESL services assistant position. Mr. Widman.
Yes, this is a reallocation of a position that is at Cash's. The position at Cash's did a lot of the screening for new students that came in, and this will be reallocated to the Seek Center. This employee would be going from a 10-month position to a 12-month position and is covered under the ESL budget. We increased the ESL budget for 3 new teachers and also supporting the Seek Center this past year for $500,000. So through the reallocation of this position, as well as what the current budget is, it will support this position without an additional ask. It fits under the budget. And the reason for being a 12-month position, we have students register, and all of the screening now won't be done in the building. Some of our ESL aides either do that or the teachers do, so now they'll have more time to work with students that are in the building because we're going to have a screener down at the Seek Center. And we already have a interested candidate that is bilingual, gentleman that is interested in that position, so we're very excited about that.
I'm really excited about the position. I'm still curious, maybe this isn't even relevant, but how finalized is Seek Center as a name?
Yeah, we're trying to use Chambersburg Education Engagement Center because of some of the connections you brought up. We just haven't formalized it yet. Sure. All the signage is going to read the Education Center. It's the one I use. Internally, we use a lot of Seek Center, but you can see we're doing it back and forth. So if there's a name suggestion change that would fit a little bit better, we're certainly open to it. But it's going to read downtown. Chambersburg Education Engagement Center will be the predominant language.
For the board and for the public, I'll just voice my concerns. I love the concept, but the name, the phonetics are a little rough. 2, it's redundant, like saying ATM machine. And Sikhs are also the 9th largest religion in the world, spelled differently. But
good points.
And I don't think any of them on their own are enough to say you should definitely change it. But when there's several things, I start wondering, is there something else we could name this?
We'll work on that.
Yeah.
He's brought it up a couple of times, and it's certainly a conversation piece.
It could just be
Engagement Center.
The
Chambersburg Education
or the
Center,
education
yeah.
center, or
Yeah.
downtown education center. I don't know what's best. I'm
Yeah.
just,
I appreciate the push.
yep.
Okay.
I like professionally pushy. I like it.
I don't think everything has to be an acronym either.
No, no.
So,
Section 7 is blank. Section 8, that's just rinse and repeat. Bit of an oversight on all of our parts. Discussed it, didn't vote last meeting. That's what Chris and I were just talking about a minute ago here. So that's just a repeat with a vote this time. Don't let me forget.
Yeah, sorry.
Safety and security, we have nothing there. Privilege of the floor. Members of the audience are invited to comment on agenda and non-agenda items. Follow the same protocol, we'll go off the list if you signed in for a comment, but if you didn't check, don't worry, you will have an opportunity as we have time with a normal attendance tonight. So first one is Valerie Jordan. 3 minutes, please.
I think Kurt's timing.
Good evening. I trust you read my emails concerning solar energy and the need to bring it into our school district for the reasonable intent of lessening our electric bills charged by West Penn Power. The school most impacted by West Penn Power is Scotland Elementary School. There are state and federal grants being offered to Pennsylvania school districts which apply for solar energy. In fact, our neighboring school district, Tuscarora, is the 5th largest solar energy district in the state. That school district generates 2,000 kilowatts of solar energy. It ranks number 5 in our state for solar energy. It also has 6 schools. The number 1 school district in our state for solar energy is Mifflin County School District. It generates 4,405 kilowatt of solar energy and has only 10 schools. Chambersburg Area School District has 17 schools. Let's think about being number 1 in the state in the area of solar energy. We can do this. Why? Number 1, grant monies are just waiting for us to move forward in this direction. 2, Superintendent Christopher Bieger leads us here. He is doing a great job of doing that, in my very humble opinion. I also don't like hearing about a former New Jersey city, Newark, scrapping its electric fleet of cars. The fleet is only 3 electric cars. I couldn't find any valid information on the World Wide Web suggesting Newark officials even took such action after purchasing 3 Nissan Leafs in 2021 for an amazing price of $89,000. That said, maybe an electric school bus would be in our future. Nothing is impossible if you put your minds into it. Federal and state grants help here too. Finally, let's start seeing the center of our universe, our amazing sun, as a positive here versus a negative. And then the second statement, I also told you I was going to mention Social Security. I also want to address Social Security in the school district's budget. And there's a specific line item, 10.261.222000. I want that money to continue to flow into this particular account so my husband and I can continue to pay our school taxes with our Social Security money. On a national level, it worries me that law known as the Social Security Act of 1935 could be abolished. Openly saying no taxes will fund this act means an end to this law. There is no 2 ways around it either. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Jordan. Any other members of the audience care to address agenda item or comment on a non-agenda item? Okay, item 11.01, district enrollment summary is out there for information only. 12.01, Mr. Bigger, public forum feedback.
Yeah, sure. Scott, if you're back there driving the computer, we jumped right over the enrollment there. So click on the second one if you could, not the first one. And so on the district website, if you go to About Us and Schools of Distinction and Blueprint, you will find every presentation I've done here in front of the board and the public. And so, was that the second presentation there? If you could go to the second one on the list, that'd be great.
It was
Oh, so we didn't.
It
no,
was a-
Yeah, they do the first one, sorry, presentation. I do want to highlight at the public forum a couple slides that were different from the September 10th and share with you some of the questions we are getting. We're not going to go over every question and answer, but if you could fast forward, please, to, I'm going to say it's slide 9 or 10, but keep going. And so you'll remember all of that right there. Go ahead, one more slide forward. Okay, so this was an additional slide, I believe. We didn't present this. I felt the need to share the numbers in each building of our current structure and then what it would look like for scenario 1 and what it would look like for scenario 4, which are 2 of our scenario options we're considering. But there was this idea that everyone knew about all the 13 elementary schools, and really everyone doesn't. They know about the school they send their child to or go to. So I wanted to highlight that we have 13 K-5 elementary schools that top this top line. 4 of those schools are 400 to 600. Those are your big schools. You heard them mentioned tonight from Mr. Widman. 8 schools are 200 to 300, and we have 1 school that serves about 125 kids. We have no intermediate school. They're K-5, and then we have 2 middle schools at 1,100 students at each middle school. We have 1 high school at 2,400 students, and then the career tech / CMS serve about 700. So that's our current school structure by the enrollment numbers. In scenario 1, we would go down to 11 schools in K-4, which means we would shutter and repurpose 2, leaving us with 5 schools that are 400 to 600 with the assumption we're building a school at Grandview. And then there will be 6 schools that are at 200 to 300, with 1 intermediate school at 500 to 6 with 1,400 students, 1 quote-unquote middle school, 7th and 8th grade at 1,400 students, and you notice 2,100 students at Cassius, and now 1,000 students at CMS, Franklin County Career Tech. So if you look at our goals, we're trying to get 300 more students into a Career Tech or CMS, as well as distribute our special education students and provide education differently, specifically in the elementary division. So scenario 4 goes down even further to 9 elementary schools, K-3. That would leave us with those 5 large elementary schools with the assumption of a build at Grandview, 4 schools, 200 to 300, 2,100 students at a large school, 400 to 6, somewhere in the Chambersburg School District, 1 7-8 to school, and then the same Cassius and CMS. So this is the scenario that was presented so people could see by the numbers. Okay, that gets everybody at the same educational standpoint. Making sense? Okay, so then I took scenario 4, which is more of the popular scenario, but it's not the decided scenario, and go to the next slide. This is the slide, next one, sorry, next one. This is the slide where it got most of the talking done at the forum, and we'll continue to get most of the talking and communication. I could present for an hour, and this is the slide everyone wants to talk about. So sometimes the reasons aren't that important to everybody, but this one is. So schools that would not change in scenario 4, and I want to emphasize this is a scenario, not a decision, but you wouldn't see any changes in the facilities as far as Scotland, Hamilton Heights, Fayetteville, and Ben Chambers, New Franklin, and Marion. You would see Stevens and South Hamilton need minor adjustments, a new Grandview, 4 or 5 deep, and then repurpose schools such as Lurgan, Buchanan, Guilford Hills, and Falling Springs. So they'll be available for early childhood, daycare, third-party providers, alternative education. We could lease those spaces. Wouldn't necessarily advising selling all those spaces, but we certainly can lease the spaces and maybe generate some revenue, but also support early childhood. The decision tree or process is like a matrix. If we agree that this is a scenario, where do we build a 4 to 6 school? It's either on CAMS North, CAMS South, or Newland. So that's a decision. If we decide to say, hey, CAMS South, we can build a brand new 4 to 6 school there and knock down CAMS South, great, you know. And I tell the story that at the butcher shop, I'm sure we don't want another 1,000 kids and car drivers and buses going around the butcher shop that's already busy. That's a fun scenario to say, but it's part of the conversation. If we decide at Green Village to build the 4 to 6 school, out certainly at that area on a brand new site, which was the site of the second high school, potentially, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, when the board made the decision to do one high school, we still own that property. So if we were to build out there, the 4 to 6 school, that would leave CAMS North and CAMS South available for the 7-8 school. One or the other, not both. And then you can go to CMS 2.0 if we add on to the Career Magnet School, or do we use CAMS South or North as the expansion of CMS or Ignite? So it's somewhat of a domino effect, and you can begin to see the decision-making process that we have to make. Crabtree Rohrball will be meeting with us tomorrow to go over preliminary scenarios of all of this, and with some estimated costs. And at that special meeting, you will get all that as well, along with our bonding scenario and potential for borrowing. So those 2 slides were new. I just wanted you to see them and hear them from me. That drove a lot of the Q&A questions. So I'm going to pause there with thoughts and questions you have, and then I can indicate if the same questions you have are what the public has. And for those that went to the forum, you can certainly share as well. I was very pleased that 76 people came. It exceeded my expectation. Very respectful, really good questions, very engaged public. I was very pleased with the turnout. I'd like a few more, but they were very engaged for good reasons. Anybody from the forum that attended have any questions about where we are in time and place?
I've got one question because I recognize living kind of near the high school and being very familiar with the traffic up around CAMS South and Butcher Shop. So I definitely respect that avoidance. But I'm curious about, because whenever I think about the bus transportation logistics, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if CAMS South is out, just for instance, and North and Green Village parcel are available, does one or the other affect how long kids got to be on buses? And
Yeah.
they're relatively close, I guess, but still.
Yeah, so whenever you consolidate, you're going to have an increase of students on buses a little bit longer. That's
Right.
just the nature of consolidation. That was a question on the Q&A too. How far away, what's the longest bus ride? And we don't necessarily have the answer to that right away. When we make a scenario discussion, our goal will be no more than 45 minutes to an hour, I think is the longest about now. I don't see anybody over an hour. I talked to Craig, and I wish Bobby was still here. I could confirm that, but yeah, the 45 minutes is a standard. And then if we have a double bus run in elementary, it's 15 minutes each run. But no matter what, when you consolidate, there will be an increase in transportation for some students. You can't get around that.
One of the advantages of the Green Village location is the major highway availabilities, both from 81 to 997, 11. We have access from both 11 and 997 to that plot of ground. And so there's a lot of potential for routing buses in different directions. And so I think that the logistics of that probably is more positive than, for instance, the CAMS South potential. One of the things that I'm really looking forward to is the consolidation of grades so that we can have class sizes that are more equalized. Whenever you have a larger number of fourth grade classes, for instance, or third grade classes in a building, you can equalize those class sizes. When I look at the enrollment figures, there are a number of schools that have classrooms that are 4 to 6 students below the caps, whereas a school within a short distance are at the cap. And I'm wondering, until we get this advantage of consolidation, is there going to be movement of new students that are not currently enrolled to those large or those smaller classes instead of continuing to increase in the locations? It just seems like there's a couple schools that continue to have small class sizes.
Yeah.
even though within a couple miles, there's another class that is oversubscribed or at the cap. It just doesn't seem fair.
Yeah. And I highlight all those problems we have with oversubscription, the babysitter rule, then you have the attendance boundaries. I told the story at the forum that we have 2 kindergarten classes at Stevens, one's 24, one is 23. We want to lower those class sizes, but do you pull the kids out now, send them to another school that has ample room? We have no room to add a class there. The ideal would be, let's just add a kindergarten teacher in Stevens, but we can't, we don't have any space. So a lot of what's driving us to that is that example. And I agree with you, much of the, after this is done, our problems will be resolved, the majority of the heavy ones. We're gonna still have some small problems, but they're not gonna be the heavy ones that we have now with the number of students that, I don't know how Kurt does it and the team, moving kids around for kindergarten and class size. I don't know how they do it. But yeah, I think that's a struggle we have that we wanna resolve. I'm gonna go to the Q&A just so you can see the Q&A, and then I'll certainly continue to highlight where it is if you could. Please, yeah. So there are, and that's a live form, so every time a question comes in, Bev sends it to me, I put an answer on there. They're very good questions. Certainly, I would read through them to make sure that you see what you're looking at. There are a couple research-based questions on why 6th grade is being moved into elementary, and I thought that was a wonderful question. Research is really clear that 6th grade needs to be in elementary versus a middle school, behavior and academic reasons, and we're accomplishing that. I think people got misperceived that a 4 to 6 building is a secondary building. It's not, it's an elementary building. It'll run on an elementary schedule. So I thought that was really good questions, but most of the questions are about where's my child gonna go to school after this is done, and where am I gonna teach? You know, most people are looking at it from their view, not necessarily questioning the need for consolidation. There's not a heavy pushback. It's more about how does this affect me? Can you tell me now where I'm gonna go to school? How far is transportation? How do I get to the extracurricular activities if it's out of town, up at Green Village? So that's the threads, but I encourage you to read through the question and answer, and it tells you where the mindset of the families are and the parents are. And we'll continue to update that after every presentation.
One of the questions I have in reviewing these questions, I think you mentioned this a few times, the guiding philosophy is that we want all of the kids together at an earlier age. How fundamentally different is that from 2 schools? Because I think that CAMS North and CAMS South, when you think about demographics, when you think about income levels, I don't think they're drastically different. Now, in terms of facilities, there's differences in terms of, but are you really getting a substantial, and I ask that because as we're at the drawing board with direction we go with architects, right? Shouldn't it be in the mix that we would consider a 2-school, like is there a possibility that you would, I mean, if the reason for bringing everyone together is at an earlier age is that so that we have more diverse schools and but doesn't 2 also accomplish that same thing? It would just be at an earlier age.
Yeah, I think for my initial reaction to that is you let some of the dollars drive a little bit of that if you have a preference. Can you do if you noticed CAMS North and South, could you convert both of them to 4-6 schools?
Right.
And that was, certainly a consideration, but one of the internal struggles we have is the competition between 6-8s, the trying to duplicate services. They're so different. We have the same thing with the Cassius and CMS. We have a lot of competition we don't need when we're just about serving kids. So there's pros and cons to both. And I think that's part of the analysis through the financial side.
Okay.
Can we afford it? Can we not? Like the architects, CAMS North could be converted to a 4 to 6, but I'm not sure CAMS South could be because they're fundamentally 2 different buildings.
Right.
So
but that's a facility issue, not a, hey, we get all the kids together.
But the decision could be that CAMS North is converted to a 4-6 and you build a brand new 4-6. Well, what school are you going to want to go to?
Right.
You're going to want to go to the brand new 4-6 by far.
So maybe in response to those questions, maybe we should get at that as well then.
Yeah.
To say,
I don't know if there's a way to make 2 4-6s equal unless we build 2 brand new ones.
Right. Yeah. So I just don't know. Yeah, I don't think that was hinted at though.
Okay.
To say
Good point.
well, we eliminate competition, that Yeah, I can see how that's detrimental for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I fundamentally, I have a entirely different perspective on that, Mr. Raber, because I advocated months ago, bring kids together earlier so that when they get to the next level, the next grade, or whatever, there's not these others. There are people they're familiar with, they've seen them,
right.
everything's okay. It lowers the stress, it improves performance.
What I'm saying is that is happening at the middle school level
Yeah.
currently. So, but there are other good reasons
Yeah. Yeah.
to continue on the path that I think we're going.
I would love to hear from the people that actually work there and students that go there, how well that's working.
Yeah. Kurt
I'd
ran
like-
both buildings. He's got good information on both. He
I'll
was the
bet.
principal of both for years, right? Yeah.
5 years of one and 9 at the other.
Yeah.
You got the scars to prove it, I'll bet.
I think fundamentally too, when the board made the decision in the late 90s, 2000s to go to one high school, and then we went to 2 middles, and now we're going back to more of the alignment, it has that familiar feel of a one Trojan team, one mascot, one community versus the splits. And I think that's where we struggle when you had a philosophy of one high school and now we had 2 middle schools and now we're coming back together. So I think you have to stick with the philosophy somehow in your structure.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Forgot 2 junior highs in there.
It was
Yeah,
like
there
the
were 2 junior highs,
two
yeah.
junior highs.
Yes.
That's what I was just thinking. It was
forgot
like the
about-
2
I'm not
junior
that- yeah.
highs.
Carl and I can remember those days.
Yes, 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 the 2 junior highs.
And,
yes.
and even to this day, just today, I was at my alumni luncheon, and, you know, the discussion with the kids who went to Central compared to the kids who went to Faust, you know, we were just talking about 2 different lives in our junior high years. You know, it was just, it is different.
But Ben, your question's a really good question. It leads to good discussion. So I appreciate the answer on there as being a little more direct in some of those answers, is what you really referenced, right? On the Q&A.
Yeah, one other comment, please. So I attended the forum, and all the questions were relatively mild-mannered, of course, and respectful. And at the end, there was a question by a gentleman who was emotionally invested in the whole decision, and he was worried about his kids, and he likes where they're going now, and, you know, changing that. And what I heard was Mr. Bigger had an answer. It was a well thought out answer, and the guy felt he was listened to. And I think that's the importance of communications here, reaching out to the public, that people know that, hey, someone hears me, finally. So thank you, Mr. Bigger.
With that being said, for the discussion's done, I noticed the gentleman had his hand up, and I know this isn't, maybe wanted to address that.
Sure.
Light screen, just switch it. Just public comment.
So I am a student that goes to both CMS and Career Tech, and I think that the way the school works right now, it shouldn't change at all. You shouldn't move CMS to Cam South. You shouldn't do any of that, because having CMS where it is right now, it allows those CMS students to easily go over to Career Tech, which allows for more easier transitioning, and also allows them, if they still have friends over on CMS side, it allows them to see them. It allows them to hang out with them and make plans and stuff like that. I think that is the way it should stay. I don't think it should change at all.
Thank you.
And for the
We're
record,
using this as a public comment, not as a Q&A. Yeah, it's an extension of public comment, if you will. But thank you.
I just wanted him to hear, I know he had his hand up in the
Yep, thank you, Lance. I didn't see that.
I think that is an option
Yeah, it was,
on
yeah.
the table, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
adding on to CMS, yeah.
right, that's one of the options we're considering.
So
Anything else,
that was it. Just stay tuned to the next public forum is October 23rd at First at Fayetteville, 7 o'clock. So we're at Fayetteville on the 21st. Yes, we do have another topic on
Yep,
videoing.
one more still. So item 12.02, we said a month ago, we talked about that this month, so we're here. Video, audio, live streaming, board meetings. I did ask Chris to start first. We have discussed this before. We're gonna discuss it again, because that's what you all wanted to do. And I did ask Chris to lead first. In our previous discussion, I think towards the end, Chris had made reference to some, it's not case law, some case study and some
Legal concerns.
legal concerns
Yeah.
that other districts have experienced. So I asked Chris
Yeah.
to go first on this, and then we'll open it up to board members to continue their discussions.
Let me start with, I don't have a preference on the decision. I'm just advising you on what I know and hear, and you get to make some heavy decisions too. This is one you guys get to make, and not me. I don't burden them all. But I will share with you, many superintendents and school boards with solicitors have been talking about artificial intelligence being used against public figures in a lot of ways, especially their video and audio. We had our first student who was artificially intelligenced against, I guess, by another student, took a video of them, used different words, and put it in place, and it certainly wasn't their views or representation of them. I think there's some struggling reasons as to why video can hurt. That doesn't mean you do everything just because there's a bad actor, but there are growing concerns. Superintendents across the state, especially more high profile than this school district, that they're used for political reasons and also very negative defamation reasons. So it's one thing to get into your job as a public official or my job. It's another when it crosses the line and gets into defamation of you and your family and your business and your job and things that you have that can have a negative effect you as a person. So just a cautionary component related to the video side. I think our job, part of the job of the board is to publicly discuss and vote, so that make sure everybody sees who votes or hears who votes and also sees the agenda on what we're voting on. That's the point. So that's the latest on growing concerns over video and potential challenges.
Okay, open it up, board members. Mr. Walker, I guess I'm gonna call on you first. You get your request.
I was about to go. Well, with that, thank you for that information. I think we're beginning to deal with the AI stuff, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll educate our students properly on the use of AI. This is obviously a brand new thing. This is a new frontier for everybody. And instill in them, the proper ways of using it if it's used at all. I'm still not one to necessarily shy away from the transparency or at least the look thereof. I think that the more we have for the citizens to participate in our meetings, whether that's audio, video, in person, asking questions or participating in public comment, I think that lends to a lot more confidence and transparency, a look of transparency. That's one of the reasons why I felt like, and especially since we had it over at the auditorium, I always, whenever you feel like you're taking a step backwards or removing something, and I'd also like to know, I guess that's probably something we could look up ourselves, how many people watched online on YouTube when we had it on YouTube. And I'm sure we could probably get those numbers.
Yeah, we might be able to get some live numbers. I don't know. Scott's giving me a grin back there. You might be able to find out. 25?
7 viewers.
7 viewers at the moment.
Yes, concurrent.
Okay, 7. So that's actually more than what we have out here in the audience, right? There's 6 in the audience, right? Right?
Yes.
One more.
Yeah.
And 2 likes.
And 2 likes, all right. Hopefully that was what I said, I don't know. But yeah, I think that I'm all for it. Obviously, I was the one who asked to bring it back to the table. I think that it's in all across the nation, in all of our halls, there's cameras that you get a chance to see, the inner workings of school boards, council, city council, Congress, and so on. So I once again would like to see it. you know, and if it's the question of, I know we have the security cameras, if that's something that would be able to be jacked into and have it, you know. But that's, yeah, that's my take on it.
Other board members?
I had a couple people who commented that they would be less likely to want to do a public comment if they were videoed.
Well, at that point, can you compromise? And depending on how it's set up, can you have the public comment out of view of the video itself? They could still do the public comment and you could hear them, but if you have them over there, is there any way? I don't know what the setup looks like in this room as to how it looks. Is there a way that we can see what that would look like? Because I don't know that I've ever seen it like that. I saw it when it was in the auditorium, but, you know, is there a way, depending on what they have here, that you can see the full board and you could put the public comment in an area that's kind of out of that? Or is it one of those things where in order to see everybody, you'd have to constantly be moving? You know, I'm interested in the logistics of it. I'm all for the transparency of things, but it also needs to look good if you're going to implement it, in my opinion, because you don't want it to be constant movement trying to figure out who's doing what. I know several school boards have, whether it's on the side or wherever it is, and you can see the entire board when they're conversing. They show the agenda items, they show the presentations as that's going on, but the discussion portion of it, is it getting late, is actually, they show the board members interacting. And I did go back and I watched our meeting from September just because I wanted to see what it looked like currently and what it sounded like. And when we got towards the end and you had us talk about Ignite, while Mike and I were talking, all you could see was artificial intelligence. So there was a little bit of a disconnect between what was being said and what was being shown. So that might cause some confusion. Whereas if we had just showing the board members as they're conversing with one another, that gives a little more context as opposed to maybe something that's up on the screen that's not actually being discussed.
I think for me, if you decide you want to do video, then we'll show you the options and possibilities. And they really are endless. It's time and money and resources. We can make it look as good as you want or not as good as you want, or minimal, like we only have one person back here, but you know, as you enhance, we'd probably need 2 people. So it's all a decision that you make and the quality you want. We'll go from there. But I would suggest you decide whether you want it, and then we'll say, okay, now this is how we want it, and then we'll make that happen.
Well, I would also ask, even for the people who are apprehensive about making public comment because they might be seen, this is a public forum. There's no reasonable expectation of privacy in a public forum. So no matter where you speak at, if you're in a public forum, you should recognize and know that you're going to be watched and looked at, whether that's through a screen or here in person if somebody shows up to watch you do your public comment.
Yeah, I was somewhat ambivalent about this decision several months ago, but then I got to thinking, first I did hear from community saying, yeah, I would like to see the video. Not many, but I heard. And second, I recalled when I was sitting there in the audience looking at the board of several years ago. And I would be there diligently taking notes, listening to what was said, the dynamics going on, the body language. It was very useful. But I would go home, and I had to double check again. Let me see, did I hear this person right? And did I see what they were saying and the way they were saying it? Because I couldn't believe my eyes what I thought I heard and wrote down. But I relied on that video to go back and confirm, this is what I heard, so that when I came to the next meeting prepared to make a comment, I wasn't wrong. It was spot on because I listened and I went over it several times. So for me, the videos were helpful. I agree with Lance. This is a public forum. Forget about your privacy. If you're going to get up here and speak, you may be seen. You may be heard. Get over it. The end of my comment.
I guess to that I say, if we're looking at being collaborative and we have people that are concerned and that is their one concern that, you know, maybe people don't want to talk about public comment, is there a compromise? Because what I think we forget, not only, you know, within the context of anything that we're into, is compromise is we come to the table when everybody leaves not getting maybe exactly what they wanted, but something that they can live with. So if, Faye, what you're saying is that your holdup is that people are saying about public comment, if we can accommodate that by doing something to have them still be able to comment, but not be on the screen, if that alleviates that concern of yours, would you then be willing to say yes, that you wouldn't mind the video?
I would say that if it's going to cost a significant money, an additional person being here, it just doesn't seem like it's worthy of that additional cost when you do hear the discussion on the current YouTube video, because we do currently have it. It's just audio. It's not the board being seen. It's only the screen. And so you have all of the content the way it is.
So we currently, as it
Steph, if I
stands,
could just 3 board members haven't made comments. Any of the, Carl, Ben, Stephanie, do you have any, would you?
I think I'm in favor of bringing back the video because I think the visual contact between the audience and the board, how we're reacting to each other, how we're reacting to the public, sometimes gives as much information as what we say out loud. I think that's two-way communication. It's not just what comes out of your mouth. It's your intonation, it's your body language, and I understand the concerns about the cost, but I think we should look into that because I believe it would be minimal. And where people stand is over there, and I actually believe that they would be off camera. You have to sign in if you want to speak, so their name is already recorded, and usually people introduce themselves. So I think that I'm in favor of bringing the video back.
Here's my thing. 2 things. Is number one, I don't want to see anyone hurt legal-wise. I mean, we're all working together as a good board. I believe that totally. And it is very dangerous what AI, I'm not thinking about students doing things. It's going to be adults doing things. Whatever, and I don't want to see anybody's character defamed or whatever in that. The other thing I think of an expression I learned in history, I was a history minor, is Congress in committee is Congress at work. Congress out in the public is Congress on show. Now, I'm not saying anybody's here going to do a show or whatever it may be. I think there is that thing that does, and that's just my opinion. I mean, I'll go with what the board says, but I don't see any necessity for it. And maybe I'll be condemned for that, but so be it. It's not the first time, and it won't be the last time. So.
Mr. Aber?
I had a point in response to Stephanie's comment, but I don't remember what it was. So, I was going to say this. I think that when guest speakers have to reveal their address, I think that that is more concerning from a privacy standpoint than being on a video. So I don't know what our options are, but if we could reduce that, I would be in favor of that. In terms of video, this is not a big deal to me. I think I lean towards having video though. Like if I have to go one direction or the other, that's, yeah. I think I'd prefer to have it. But I'm not, if the rest of the board felt otherwise, I'd be fine with that too. So if we're voting on it, and I think that's what needs to happen, is we just need to vote on it, right? If we're voting on it, I'm supportive. But it's really not a big deal to me.
I'm gonna, with my comments, I'm gonna touch on a little bit of what most of everyone else commented on before, and we did discuss this previously, so a lot of it's a repeat. In regard to public comment, I made this statement before, and members of the public criticized me, and members of this board were adamant that I shouldn't read the statement I was reading because it would dissuade people from making public comment. So if a generic statement would dissuade somebody from making public comment, and if you believe that then I would certainly think a video would same be dissuade. And those of you making faces were probably some of the same ones who were criticizing me when I would read the generic statement. Transparency, yes. Before, and I have switched my mind on this. For many years, and Mr. Walker is probably has the most experience, I was a very strong proponent for videoing. And I wanted them videoed, and I wanted to keep the videos. And because, as we've talked about before, the communication from administration and board and public was not, 2-3 years ago, it was a far cry from where we are today. I felt it was very much needed 2-3 years ago. I don't know that it's needed as much now just because of the transparency and the communication, and I'm gonna give all the credit in the world to Chris for that. Employee time and logistics, Chris said it better, time and resources. I don't want more staff to have to come in here in the evening. We signed up to do this as volunteers. You know, I don't want to ask another staff member to come in and do this. And I'm not faulting the operator at all. If you think about last meeting, you know, the more things you're clicking on when we were doing the presentations last meeting, you know, we had trouble getting it in situation. I had an instance today. I was working on a pretty in-depth financial report. Phone rings, I switch gears, I have to go to a different screen, and, you know, classic Ed, guess what? I didn't save my old document, and now I get to redo it all again. So it's not employee error, but the more things we're asking employees to do, I'm not sure if it's as beneficial. And my last comment is, well, my next to last comment, as far as addresses, the reason we do a sign-in is members of the audience no longer give their address. We don't ask. Back in the day, we asked them to give their address just to verify that they were a resident of the district. That's what the sign-in sheet is. The sign-in sheet does not become part of the public record. So when you speak, yes, the public knows your name because I introduced your name, but they do not know your address unless they want to do a Google search on you, I guess. My last comment is one I feel probably the most strongest about, and probably one of my lowest moments on this school board, and was when, I think the 2 times we've been sued. And the second one of those, we were sued collectively as a board and as individuals. And you know, the look on my wife's face when I went home and I said, Amy, I'm being sued. And she was flabbergasted. And then our solicitor advised all of us, you better contact your insurance company. Because, you know, collectively as a board, we got you, but, you know, this could go against you and you need to put your insurance company on notice. So I called my insurance adjuster, the next agent, the next day, who I have had a lifetime relationship with, and she's flabbergasted. But, so if there's any chance that this helps create another lawsuit, I'm against it. I'm just dead against it. I'm still scarred from that episode, and I don't want to take the chance anymore. I'm going to ask, we'll go back and let board members discuss, but you have this in front of you, and where I am right now, I am a 6 on this, is where I'm at. I was probably closer to a 5, but I have since moved to the 6.
So I'm not sure I understand the connection between the videos and you're being sued. Maybe I missed that. But we did do this. This is not like a new rocket science kind of thing. Like just a couple years ago before we went to the auditorium, we were doing it. There wasn't any kind of sexy, exotic video things going on. It was just simply looking at the board, talking. I saw there was like one person back there, not a whole staff. So I'm kind of confused. Maybe there's even historical data. When they were being videoed, how many people did tune in? How many people were watching them when they were doing it? I don't know the answer to that, but look, I'm happy to support the decision of the board. I will support it 100%. But we did this before, folks. And if someone's going to give us some legal advice, I hope it's not just a bunch of superintendents. I hope we get our own attorney to tell us what's going on and how it's going to impact us, if it will at all. And yeah, let's vote.
So we couldn't just have a stationary camera with the current person there, just basically what we're doing now, but you add a stationary camera from the time. Because if we can do that, that's all I'm asking for. That's all I personally was looking at. It's what we're doing now, but when we're discussing, it's a group shot of the board. And I don't know that that's going to take any additional time and resources. So that's, I guess, where I'm coming from. I certainly don't want to have to bring in staff and do all that. So that never even crossed my mind when we were talking about it, because I thought what we're doing now, and then whenever somebody's done presenting and we're discussing like we are now, boom, it's a shot of the board. It's not like zooming in on Ben when he's talking, zooming in, so that's kind of my mindset. So the thought of extra costs and additional people never even crossed my mind, because I just thought what we're doing now plus one shot of the board.
Yeah. Keep it simple.
Yeah. Oh, yes. That's 100% what I was thinking.
So what you're saying is that during a presentation, it would be the screen.
Yes.
I think we want this. I think we want the screen for some portions.
Everything we're doing now, but during the discussion, it's a shot of the board. That was my thought process. It's not just the board all the time while people are presenting. It's currently what's going on now. As the slides are on the screen and the agenda's up there, that's perfect. But then when we're having these discussions, it's a shot of the board. So you can see the interaction between people and see people talking. Like, as simple as that. That was all that was in my mind, nothing extravagant or anything else.
Yeah, I like
1 to 6, where are we?
I like when the presentations are up there. I think that's absolutely crucial to Faye's point. I don't want to see a big pan shot whenever there's a document up there that we're all looking at, right? So, and whoever is in the back will toggle back and forth as they see fit, and we trust that they'll do their best with it, and it's not going to be how everybody wants it perfectly. I would imagine too, we've all been in meetings, or many of us have been in meetings with the OWL technology. There's probably other cameras that are like that where it might do some of the panning for you, right? And I'm not suggesting that we have to even go that route, but it would be simple from a staffing standpoint if that was there.
And that would be a blend then of what we have now compared to what we did before, because before it was a panning of the entire meeting. There was no focus on the screen.
Yeah, I don't like that.
No.
Correct. Honestly, as it is right now, and then when we discuss, shot of the board. That's the only time you see the board. That's my thought process about all of it. I love what it is now, and then just like I said, as we discuss, okay, now we're all talking. Then it comes back up, but not just us all the time. No. No, that was not at all my thought process. Right. And I don't know how to answer your 1 to 6, because now that you said you're a 6, I guess that would make, we're not all agreeing without reservation, so I don't feel comfortable saying 2. So I guess I'd have to say 1, because I support this and would like to see it go through. Is that how that works in this case? I feel like it's a little bit off, because obviously it's not consensus, but I would like to see this go through. And guess what? Here's the other thing, and this is my mindset. We try this, and it turns into a big hot mess, then we don't do it anymore, and we go back to what we have now, right? And I say, hey, my fault. right? I was wrong. I thought it was going to be a good idea. It turned into a hot mess. It's not feasible. Let's go back to what we were doing. And I can do that. That's not a problem.
Well, I think Chris said that he would want to bring to us this is how it could work.
Right.
Before we would make a decision.
Yeah.
So we're not voting tonight. It's not a voting meeting anyways, so, yeah.
I would say I'm at a 4. I have reservations. I don't say that we need more discussion, but with more information, I might move up as long as it was not the old way or the way I have seen other boards where it's constantly on the board members instead of focused on what the topic is, because it just is, I've just seen a
Yeah, that defeats the
number of
purpose,
those.
100%. I agree with you on that. I would not want all the board all the time. The way it is now, plus, I mean, Lance and I think you and I discussed that, you know, when you and I were the only two that were kind of looking at that, so. But yeah, Faye, 100% not all the board all the time. The way it is now, plus just the shot during discussion is where I'm at.
Whenever you were in the auditorium, for instance, you could see people walking up to the podium. It was just, I don't know, it looked
Yeah,
chaotic.
right, absolutely, absolutely.
All right, we'll vote at the end of the month, and then in 3 months, we'll discuss again.
So Chris will bring to us
And then-
before we vote.
And then the next time we do board assessment, I don't want anyone making a comment about always discussing the same thing, because I guess it depends on what you want to rediscuss the second and third time.
I mean, if you guys vote to do video, then I'll put together what you need. So I don't know if you need to see it all before, but I'm sure we can accommodate your vision for it. So I would just vote that you want video at the next meeting, yea or nay. And then we'll put something together that accommodates kind of what you were saying.
All right, meeting's adjourned.